We were sitting in science class, bored out of our minds, when we all heard it. It sounded like an earthquake, and one guy in our class actually dived under his desk. And then we saw it. There was a helicopter coming in to land on the soccer pitch. Some of the girls started squealing that maybe a celeb was coming to visit us, and they rushed over to the window to get a better look. I knew exactly who it was, though, and I had to get out of there quickly before he found me. He stepped out of the helicopter in a purple velvet Gucci suit with his crocodile skin shoes and gold-encrusted sunglasses. Suddenly, the girls weren't interested anymore, and my old best friend Sally started laughing and pointing at him. I was burning with shame by this point, and so I asked the teacher if I could use the bathroom, but it was too late. He was already outside the door, waving frantically. He didn't even wait for the teacher to open up. He just burst in and said, "Say bye to everyone, because you are off to a new school. But don't worry, your friends can come flying with us anytime." Honestly, I wanted to die. Ever since my dad had become a billionaire, he turned into a complete psycho, and this was only the beginning. Before I unleash the crazy things my dad did with all his money, click like and subscribe on My Story Animated. And who knows, maybe you'll become a billionaire one day too. Just promise me you won't go insane like my dad. So there he was, standing in my class, humiliating me in front of everyone. After I'd done such a good job hiding how rich he'd become, I couldn't stand him being here 1 second longer, so I grabbed my bag and basically pushed him out the door. As we left, I heard Sally saying, "If her dad's so rich, how come she still dresses like she lives on the streets?" My dad heard her too and turned to me and apologized for not buying me any new clothes yet. Then he said he could get me a suit to match his. I honestly couldn't think of anything worse. I told him he'd taken it too far this time. And then he told me to wait until we got home because he had a big surprise waiting for me. I looked back at the school as we climbed into the helicopter, and literally every single person was staring at us. I'd be all over Instagram and be the laughingstock of the whole town. Don't get me wrong. At first, being rich was kind of fun. We got to take all these cool vacations, and Dad bought a kick-ass boat, which I was not complaining about one bit. I loved the water. But then he'd started dressing in all these ridiculous outfits and had more friends than ever before, which I was definitely suspicious about. Friends he hadn't seen for years had crawled out of the woodwork, and this was why I didn't want everyone at school knowing how stinkin' rich we were. If only my dad hadn't sold his company and become a billionaire. In the helicopter, my dad was so excited, but I just sat there with my head in my hands. My phone kept beeping as people posted about me on Instagram. And then my boyfriend texted me saying, "You told me your dad was rich, but I didn't know he was this rich." I was getting so many friend requests. I thought my phone was going to blow up. This was exactly what I didn't want. And now my dad had ruined everything. When we got home, I headed straight for my room. But my dad ran after me and asked, didn't I want to see the surprise? No, Dad, I really didn't. Gosh, why couldn't he just leave me alone? He took me by the hand and dragged me round to the pool. And you will not believe what was in it. An actual car in the pool. My dad was laughing and said he'd bought it especially for me. A submarine sports car. Because I loved the ocean so much, he thought this would be perfect for me. My own personal submarine. I could see him waiting for me to respond, so I just smiled. But all I could think was how crazy he'd become. I couldn't even drive. This was next level ridiculous. What would he buy next? Then as I walked away after muttering thanks, he chased after me and said it was an early birthday present. But my real present was the epic party he had planned for me. What party? I asked him. Then he just winked at me and said he'd already invited the whole school. That it would be the biggest and best party anyone had ever been to, and there would be even more surprises. No, I couldn't handle this. I didn't even like half the people at my school. In fact, I was a bit of a loner, and I liked it that way. I'd been planning to just hang out with my boyfriend on my birthday. Well, hopefully no one would come now that they'd seen how crazy my dad was. But then my dad told me he'd hired someone to send gifts to every single person to invite them. And when I asked what he was talking about, he said he'd sent everyone a new personalized cell phone and stuck the invite inside the box. He said they'd probably receive them later that evening. I almost screamed. Those people didn't deserve a free phone. What was my dad doing? I went to find my mom to tell her to go sort that out, but she wasn't even bothered. She was loving this new life of luxury and was busy having a hot stone massage and told me to leave her in peace. Great, so I was the only one who didn't love being this rich. I woke up the next day dreading school. Everyone was flashing their new phones in my face, and then at lunch, Sally came to sit next to me. I asked what she wanted, and she said maybe we should be friends again. After all, we'd been best friends as kids, and she didn't understand what happened to us. How about the fact she'd turned into a complete brat and basically bullied me? So no, I wasn't interested in being friends with her again, but she wouldn't leave me alone. She even snapped a pic of us together. Eventually, my boyfriend saved me. She saw him approach and said, "Ew," then left. Good riddance to her. Everyone was talking about my party, and people I hadn't even seen before came up to try and chat to me. If this was what celeb life was like, I was fine being a normal person. I got home from school and spotted my dad sitting by the pool. He looked pretty sad, and I thought something must have happened, so I ran over. But when he saw me, he quickly started smiling and then gave me a big hug. I asked him if he was okay, and he said of course he was. Then he ran inside and I could hear something barking, and I thought, oh no, he didn't. But he'd bought me a dog, a handbag dog. He said he'd ordered it from Japan and it had just arrived, and that all rich girls need a handbag dog. Otherwise, are they even rich? But that's not all. I walked into the kitchen and there was a complete stranger sitting at the table. I was used to butlers and cleaners and gardeners running around, but this guy didn't look like he worked here. So what was he doing? He jumped up when he saw me and said, "You must be Kara. Hi, I'm Frank, your new personal assistant. Whatever you need, just let me know." My dad was standing behind us, and I turned around and said, "Dad, I'm 15. I don't need a PA." Then I left him and Frank standing there. Frank wouldn't give up though. He brought me a glass of water and even offered to help show me how the submarine worked. But after that, he was only nice to me if my dad was around. I even caught him watching movies in our cinema. It was like he only took this stupid PA job so he could hang out at our mansion. His dad was around a lot too. Suddenly, he was my dad's best friend, and I don't even know where he came from. One night, I warned my dad to be careful, and he got so defensive and said Frank's dad was the best. And then my dad said he'd lent him the helicopter for the weekend because he was a photographer. And I just thought, wow, what an idiot. This guy was using my dad. It was obvious. But there were worse things on the horizon. My birthday finally arrived, and I was woken up by my dad, who was riding a white horse with a horn attached to its head. Who else can say they've been woken up by a unicorn on their birthday? Oh man, this was going to be a long day. And it was. I actually tried to escape before the party even started, but Frank caught me leaving the estate and called security to block me from leaving. It made me feel like a prisoner in my own home. There was nothing else for it. I just need to go through with the party and hope it wasn't a complete disaster. My dad had bought a cake the size of a small house, and there were like 10 unicorns prancing around. And then the worst part, my dad came out in a leopard print onesie and said it was a fancy dress party. Then he gave me and my mom outfits to match his. My mom was so excited, but I refused to wear mine. It clearly upset my dad, but I didn't care. I never asked for any of this. Pretty soon, people started arriving, and it wasn't just people from school. There were so many strangers there who claimed to be friends with my dad, and I saw them heading straight for the table of gifts. My dad had bought gifts for everyone. I mean, it was my birthday, not theirs. This was what happened when you had too much money. Then Sally arrived, and I did not want her there. I saw her walking in, and I went straight to my dad and asked why she was there. He ignored me and ran over to Sally saying, "Look how grown up you are. Kara's missed you so much. You haven't been around to play in years." I just glared at Sally and she came right up and hugged me and whispered, "Let's just play nicely, okay?" Then she laughed and walked off. I saw Frank eyeing her up. He even came up and asked me if she was single. And of course, that was the exact moment my boyfriend arrived. I was so happy to see him. He handed me a gift and said happy birthday. It was my all-time fave book, and I thanked him. But Frank was standing right there, and then he said, "Oh, I almost forgot. Here." And he gave me a little box. It was a necklace. Why would he spend so much on me? My boyfriend immediately asked who he was, and he winked and he said he was my new best friend. And when my boyfriend introduced himself, Frank said, "Oh, I've never even heard of you before, mate. Kara never mentioned you." After that, you could have cut the tension with a knife. My boyfriend looked super upset. And then my dad appeared and said Frank just told him I had a boyfriend and he wanted to meet him. But it was too late. My boyfriend was walking away. I ran after him and he said he didn't recognize me anymore and that maybe I should just go date Frank instead. I almost burst into tears. Then I felt someone put their arm around me and it was Frank. He said, "Aw, don't cry. I mean, he bought you a book. You deserve better than that, loser. Come on, babe. Let's get back to your party." This was a disaster. All these people were at my party, not because they liked me, but because my dad was rich. And now I'd just lost the one person I actually wanted to be here. I went to find my dad and almost exploded with anger when I saw him chatting to Sally. I saw Sally showing him the photo of us saying how we were best friends again. What a liar! I asked my dad if we could talk, and then I told him he was destroying my life by showing off like this. And now I'd even lost my boyfriend because of him. I turned to him and said, "I wish you'd never become a billionaire. I miss the old you." For a moment, my dad looked really hurt, but then he turned around and everyone was looking and he went to join them. Sally's parents were even there, and I saw him walk towards them, but they turned away from him. He looked back at me and tried to smile, but I could see he wasn't happy either. I went to my room and tried to block out the sound of all those strangers pretending to celebrate my birthday. It was pathetic. I just wanted everything to go back to how it was before. Eventually, people left, but I could still hear Sally's voice. She was sitting by the pool with Frank. And then I saw my dad with Sally's parents, and they were talking about their new business idea and trying to get my dad to invest in it. My dad got up to get them a drink, and as soon as he walked away, they started laughing at him and whispering. It made me sick. I went straight to my dad and told him they needed to leave now. But he said he was about to sign a contract with them. I couldn't let this happen. My dad was delusional, and he looked exhausted. There's no way he was actually thinking straight. I walked straight out to where Sally's parents were and told them it was late and it was time to leave. They just laughed. And then I lost it. I told them if they didn't leave, I'd call security. And then they said I was nothing but a spoiled brat and that I had no right to speak to them like that. Well, I really did call security. They arrived before my dad did and asked them to leave. They made such a fuss and started saying mean things about me and my dad. They even grabbed some more gifts on the way out. Then Sally shouted over to me that I couldn't even buy friends with all this money. I was destined to be a loser forever. My dad heard everything. He came outside and collapsed onto a sun lounger, and I just started shouting at him. I told him he couldn't just go out and buy happiness, and that Sally's parents weren't interested in being friends with him. They just wanted his money. Same with Frank's dad. They were all laughing behind our backs. I then said I knew he wasn't happy because I'd caught him looking miserable these past few weeks, and that he had ruined my life. Suddenly, he started crying. I couldn't believe it. I'd never seen my dad cry before. He said he was sorry. He had only hired Frank because he thought he might be a good match for me, and that he really wanted Frank's dad to be friends with him because he seemed like a nice guy. But now, Frank was more interested in Sally, and he just messed everything up. Hang on, he'd hired Frank to try and date me? How could he do that? I seriously wanted to scream at him, but seeing him crying like that, I just felt sorry for him. He was so desperate for people to like him. Then he kept saying how much he missed work and that he regretted selling the company because now all he did every day was buy ridiculous clothes and eat caviar imported from across the world and ride around in a helicopter he didn't even like. He knew people were laughing at him, but he didn't know what else to do with all this money. He'd assumed I was as lonely as him, but if he'd ever stopped to ask me, he'd have known I'd been happy with my boyfriend and living a modest life. I didn't want all this bling, and I definitely didn't want a submarine sports car. That night was a turning point for both of us. Dad told Sally's parents the deal was off, and he fired Frank after getting his helicopter back from Frank's dad. Then, he said he had one last surprise for me. I wasn't interested, but he dragged me there. And believe it or not, he actually nailed this one on the head. He'd convinced my boyfriend to get back together with me, and he took us on a sunset helicopter ride over the town. When we passed Sally's house, I asked my dad if we could land in their garden just to rub our money in their faces, but my dad said he didn't want to land on their tainted land. So it all worked out. My boyfriend took me back. Sally never spoke to me again, and my dad went back to dressing normally. And guess what? He donated the helicopter and the submarine and all the other crazy stuff he bought, and now he has friends again. Not because he's a billionaire, but because he's actually a super nice guy. We're thinking of starting a business together doing party planning. Because let's be honest, my dad knows how to throw one heck of a party. Unicorns and all.